Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 10th District Congressional Candidate Forum. My name is Linda Petru. I'm the 10th District Chair. I'd like to bring out our candidates before we start, and I'm going to bring them out alphabetically. Charles Eller, Dina Jimison, Brooke McGowan, and now I'd like to bring out Margot Holland for a prayer to begin us.
Thank you, Chairman Petru. It's all bow our heads. God, we thank you for living in a nation that not only calls on you, but that you desire to give us wisdom and understanding. Lord, that you tell us that when those who rule and who are wicked, the people are in agony, but those who are righteous, the people rejoice. So we ask for wisdom and understanding in this evening, Lord. We ask that you would speak through these candidates, that they would know you, that your people would rejoice, and we ask for a peacefulness with a blessing, again, of wisdom and understanding. In God's name, amen.
Amen.
Now I'd like to ask John Taylor to come out and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right before we begin, I'd like to thank some people for putting this on. You know, no event is run by itself. It takes a number of people. I'd like to first of all thank Gary Robinson, Dr. Gary Robinson, the chair of Iredell, Brian Summers, who's going to be our moderator this evening and helped set up this facility, Eric Millsaps, who is a publisher of newspapers in Hickory, Statesville, and Mooresville, and our host tonight, WSIC. Also want to thank the Iredell Statesville School District. So we're going to start off this evening with me turning it over to the moderators, or I should read the rules first so everybody knows what we're going to be doing this evening. The seating on stage, each candidate is seated alphabetically from left to right, or I guess, yeah, left to right, right to left from your way of looking at it. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Each candidate will then have 2 minutes to answer each question. The questions will be asked in order of seating, so each of the candidates will have an opportunity to reply to a question first. This will continue until the time is up. And when we end, the candidates will have up to 3 minutes to wrap up. So I'm going to turn the proceeding over now to Brian Summers to start with the questions.
Good evening. I'm Brian Summers. Welcome to my high school. And we have a judge here who will be doing the timekeeper. And so the Honorable Judge Rob Young, he is the timekeeper, and he will signal to the candidates the amount of time that they have with 3 folders: red, yellow, and green. And so at that time, when you see Rob jump up and down with the colors, you know you have a minute left on your time and to sit down. And so I also want to acknowledge the students from Statesville High School who were given an assignment to come here this evening. All right, so the very first question we have will go to Ms. McGowan here, and it's, she should be asked, why do you want to run for Congress?
May I stand?
Yep, sure, come to the podium, absolutely. So yeah, each candidate will be given, so their time will start when they get to the podium, and they'll get 2 minutes to do their response.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, folks, for coming tonight to the Congressional District 10. I appreciate your time, and I hope you know that we do respect you and we want to be able to answer these questions for you to know more about us. My name is Brooke McGowan. I am a grassroots constitutional conservative activist candidate, giving you an option in this race. I do not have any PAC money. I am not beholden to anyone. I am the We the People choice. I have grassroots groups have endorsed me, the Truckers for the Constitution, the Bikers for America. I support the Forgotten American, the Tea Party groups, Mama Bear groups, and other groups. And the reason they've chosen to endorse me is because I will fight for you. My signs say fight back, and that's not just a slogan. That's been my life work. In fact, my verse the Lord gave me many years ago was Ephesians 5:11, and that is, take no part in the wicked deeds of darkness, but expose them. And that has been my life work. I have exposed them. I have fought. I have sued governors. I've been sued by by teachers' unions. I have been fighting for you. I want you to know I will do that in DC. I will continue to do that here with constituent services. And I want you to know that I love North Carolina. It is our forever home, and we are grateful to be a part of it. Thank you.
All righty. The next question is for Miss Dana Jimison, as she will come up to the microphone. Why do you want to run for Congress?
My name is Diana Jimison. I was born and raised in Catawba County. I have an interesting fact about myself. I ran as a write-in in 2020 against Patrick McHenry. I became very concerned about the way he was voting for us. So I tracked him down at one of the events to ask him questions, because one of those questions pertained to the federal tracking database that was released that 3 Republican candidates had voted for in the state of North Carolina. I was very concerned. If you know me, I'm passionate about health care and I'm passionate about people. You can find those questions on my campaign page, and how he answered, it was opposite of what's been recorded in the congress.gov. The day after I filed, I still felt called to do so. When God speaks, I try to obey. The day after I filed, in my daily devotions, there was a passage that shook me. I didn't realize that there were scriptures that were so applicable to this day. It's found in Amos chapter 5, 10 through 15. It says that you have, oh goodness, I'm a little nervous. Please write this down if I can't get this out, okay? Amos chapter 5, 10 through 15 is applicable for this day and for this hour. It talks about just misusing people and using, even the political realm to abuse people. And God says that, I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm nervous.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So our third candidate here is Mr. Charles Eller, as he approaches the podium for the response. Why do you want to run for Congress?
Well, thank you for having me here. I must say it feels good to be home. I have not been on this stage since I graduated high school here in 1980. So as you can tell, I'm one of you. My name's Charles Eller. I was born here, grew up here, graduated schools here, raised a family here, started a business here. And I'm running for Congress because I truly believe that we are in a 1776 moment. In 1776, we had to fight for our independence. And right now, our independence and way of life are in jeopardy, and we're having to fight for it again. My campaign theme is liberty, prosperity, and security. And unfortunately, we're about ready to lose all three if we don't do something now. Our liberty is in jeopardy with the weaponization of government against its own citizens, going after its political opponents, imprisoning people without a trial. Our prosperity is in jeopardy with the reckless spending that is crushing Americans economically, and our security is in jeopardy with the invasion and occupation by millions of illegal aliens on the southern border. I want to go to Washington to address these problems, solve these problems, so that we have liberty, prosperity, and security, not only for ourselves, but our posterity. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Eller. You know, it's very important what you all are doing here and the task that is in front of you, as one of you three will be in the 119th Congress in DC and representing Iredell County and the other 4 counties, Forsyth, Yadkin, Catawba, and Lincoln. It's very, very important that constituent services is very a priority for you. One of the questions was, how will you serve a constituency that may not have voted for you in this election? There is almost 17% of minorities in the 10th district. And how would you all respond and represent them? First to you, Ms. McGowan.
Thank you for that question, Brian. Well, I was just speaking to Diana about this. You know, our congressman has disappeared and we don't really have touch with him anymore. You call up to DC or even here in the district and you don't get to hear back. I want 3 offices in the district. I would like to service the constituents by having an office in Maiden, which would service Hickory and Lincolnton, and then one in Louisville to service Forsyth County, Winston-Salem, and Yadkinville. And then also right here in Statesville. This is very important to me. I want to be in touch with the people. I think that's most important for a congressperson, a representative. In fact, let me say, we just met a candidate in another race, congressional race, who said, when you're in DC, you're a congressman, and when you're in your home district, you're a representative. And what he was telling us was, in Congress, you have to play the game. Well, I don't play games. I want to serve you no matter what. No matter what I'm told by the RNC, by the committees, by the RNCC chair, I will serve the people of my district no matter what I'm told. And I want you to know I will fight for you. And I will do that through those 3 offices here in the district, but also while I'm in the District of Columbia.
Ms. Jimison, how will you serve voters who may not vote for you in this election, but live here in your district, constituent services?
Referring back to whenever I met with Patrick McHenry during the last election, I had asked several questions. And after that event, the way he treated me was absolutely unacceptable. Regardless of how we believe, if you disagree with me, I will fight for you. There are biases, and we've got to put the biases away. Everyone matters. And I will fight for you in Washington, regardless of race, ethnicity, even your sexual orientation. We deserve better. You deserve better. That was unacceptable. He actually said, I have never experienced this in the 20 years that I've ran. Well, why not? Because he would shut people down. Well, a different breed is rising up, and we can't back down. It's time to fight and take back our nation. Thank you.
Good deal. Thank you. Same question for you, Mr. Eller, on constituent services.
Well, I'm going to represent all people in this district, regardless of race, creed, or color, or anything. We all have the same problems, right? We're all being affected by this crappy economy. We're all being affected by what's going on the southern border. We're all being affected by what's going on with the overreaching hand of big government. So I don't have to share the same political affiliation to treat everybody the same. As far as you asked a question about minorities, I'm glad you asked that question, because I feel like the Republican Party has done a horrible job of reaching out to the minority community. The issues facing the minority community are the same issues that we all face. And the Democratic Party has totally abandoned the minority community. It's actually become a modern day version of a slave plantation. They divided families, they've made people dependent, dejected, and just like the Democratic Party of the 1860s, it's time for minorities to emancipate themselves from that Democratic Party again and join the Republican Party, the party that brought you Abraham Lincoln, that brought you the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, and then the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. And if you join the Republican Party, in the words of Martin Luther King, you will truly be judged by not the color of your skin, but by the content of your character.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for that. As you know, being members of Congress, you have a duty and a responsibility every year to look at the budget, to receive the budget as it comes out of committee to the floor for a vote. And your vote is very important. The U.S. government has not balanced the budget since 1996. We've increased spending hand over hand every year, raised it whether Democrats was in control or Republicans. The spending in Washington is out of control. As a member of Congress, what will be your role to radically pull in the excessive spending by our government? First to you, Ms. McGowan.
Me again, yay. Well, you've heard me tell the story, maybe if you know me well, that when I lived in Oklahoma, we moved away for a little while from North Carolina in 2014, and when we lived in Oklahoma, they passed an excessive taxation on the people when we were sitting in a surplus. So I stood up something called Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite with Senator Tom Coburn, who's sort of a mentor to me. Now, Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, we offered a veto referendum, which was a mechanism to do in Oklahoma, and we were going to pull back that taxation by the people, let the people decide, right? They went into special session for this crazy bill, HB 1010XX, to excessively tax the poor mainly. And we were sitting on the surplus, so we were mad about that. One of the things I want to do when I'm in Congress is revive what Senator Tom Coburn did in the House first and then in the Senate, and that was the Constitutional Waste Book. I want to prepare that for you so you can see it from the floor after we've looked at all of the budget and appropriations and what's happened with the budget, the incredible amount of waste and duplicity and fraud that you pay for. Are you aware that in just the last budget, last year, you paid for Napa Valley to have a bike path? You paid for the country of Ghana to study whether or not they needed seatbelts and helmets to be safer. You paid for these things, and I will bring out, first I'll vote no for all of that, but secondly, I'll bring that out to you so you can see it and we can pull that back. It is ridiculous to be spending that kind of crazy. What happens is foundations and grants always apply for this money, and the Congress just gives it, and we've got to make that stop, and I will stop it.
Good deal. Thank you. Same question to you, Ms. Jimison.
I believe we all know that the dollar has lost its value, and we can't keep reprinting money. We've got to reel in our monies that we give to other countries. What are we up to now with the Ukraine? 100 billion, a lot of money. It's got to stop when our people are hurting. We've got to, like Ms. McGowan said, we've got to budget and stop wasting money on these ridiculous things. People are hurting. You've heard about the gas, the electricity bills going up. I mean, people can't afford food. The gas prices are up. There's got to be change. And we know that one person can't create that change. So we've got to go in and we've got to build a team of people with like-mindedness that care about our nation and join together and fight in this particular situation, the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Eller.
Thank you for that question. Well, as somebody who's a former small business owner and who majored in economics in college, I'll tell you exactly what I would do. It took this nation from 1790 to 1983. It took us 193 years to accumulate $1 trillion in federal national debt. Right now, we're going in debt $1 trillion every 5 months. So just let that sink in. What I would do, and I'm going to commit to doing this right now, I'm going to commit to not raising the national debt 1 penny. We're going to cut up the government's credit card because it's maxed out. And if people say, well, the government's going to default, that's not true. We're taking in $5 trillion, we're spending $7. We need to go back to pre-COVID spending levels, which is $5 trillion, to get revenues and expenditures in alignment. I would pay the interest on the national debt and the face amount of those bonds. That totals about $700 billion. The next thing I would do is I would protect Social Security and Medicare. They're off the table, but everything else is on the table. Everything else has to be on the table. So we have to live within our means, because right now we're going bankrupt, and all we're doing is printing money, and it's causing inflation, high interest rates, and that's why 65% of people are struggling and living paycheck to paycheck.
Good deal. Good answer. Thank you. Thank you all for those answers. To keep things moving right along, and I'll start here with you, Ms. McGowan. There are committees within the Congress, and one of you three will be sitting on one of those committees in the House of Representatives. Has you, as a candidate, looked or investigated as to which committee your expertise and your interests that would best serve the 10th District that you would like to serve on if elected to Congress?
Yes, I mentioned a moment ago, appropriations, definitely want to clean that up. The CR that Charles was talking about, every single year, we continue to kick the can down the road, and I want to clean that up. I'll do that in appropriations. I also would like to join the Veterans Affairs Committee. That's important to me. My father was a Vietnam veteran, and both my grandfathers fought in world wars, and that's important to me. I want to take care of our veterans 100%. They deserve it. I'd also like to be a part of that committee that is requesting that we divest from China, because the Chinese Communist Party really owns the United States. You know that if you don't pay your mortgage, the bank comes after it and comes after your home. And if we don't pay our debt to China, China's going to own us even further. And I would like to be a part of that, removing that. I'm also interested in agriculture, if I could mention that. I think it's very important right now that we see clean food and pure food. I'd like to present a Pure Food Security Act and get the bioengineered out of our diet. There's no reason that in Europe they have clean food. Why can't we have clean food? Glyphosate and the bioengineered food that you see all over the place. Crickets now, they want to put protein crickets. I want to protect the individual cattlemen and cattlewomen and ranchers, because the WWF has been coming, and that's the World Wildlife Fund, has been coming after cattle. They want to pierce the ears. They already have tags, but they want to end up ultimately controlling how many cattle, because they have a 30 by 30 plan. I read what they do at the WWF and the WHO. 30 by 30 is reduce carbon emissions by 30% before the year 2030. I see the flag.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good deal. Ms. Jimison?
My passion is healthcare and people. I've been a registered nurse, certified case manager for many years. 2020 lit a fire in me. I had wanted to pursue nurse practitioner. However, when the biggest scamdemic transpired in 2020, it changed. It put a fire in me for political aspirations to help create change, because I've seen people suffer and they shouldn't have suffered. I've seen people die they shouldn't have died. I'm a firm believer that my daughter, who suffers a lot of health conditions, was affected by her childhood vaccines. There would be a lot of things that I would bring out that I would make sure comes to the public. There's been a lot of things hidden from the people, and I'm not okay with that. One thing that I have come to, oh goodness, I want to talk about this really bad. I discovered I had a condition 2 years ago that had been dismissed by the medical community. I figured it out on my own, and it was discovered in the 1940s. 1 out of 9 women suffer from this condition, so you probably have a sister, aunt, mother, daughter walking around with a condition and they have been misdiagnosed. There's so much that they have held back from us. There's treatments for this. I have been denied 3 times by my insurance. I will fight for those with these diseases that have not been taught in medical school, totally dismissed. It is my passion, and I will fight.
Good deal. Thank you, Ms. Jamison. Mr. Eller.
There's so many committees. I would like to be on the Foreign Relations Committee, the Appropriations Committee, and the Judiciary Committee. I'd like to be on the Foreign Relations Committee because I'm sick and tired of America fighting these perpetual wars for perpetual peace. We've been at war 20 years in the 21st century. That is more than the combined wars of the 20th century combined, and we're not even a quarter of the way through this century. I want to end the aid to Ukraine. I want to go after China, and I also want to secure this southern border. As far as appropriations go, I think we need to have individual appropriations bills. I want to defund and dismantle and deconstruct this administrative state and all these alphabet agencies that are doing nothing but running roughshod over the American people and are operating in an unconstitutional manner. And the Judiciary Committee, I want to start holding these people accountable that locked us down during COVID, lied to us, just has ruined the lives of a lot of children psychologically, physically, and emotionally. And any other committee I can be on that will help further the America First agenda, I'm open to doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eller. And since you sort of opened the door to foreign policy, as you know, the House of Representatives has the charge over domestic politics, particularly in the U.S. The Senate has charge over foreign policy. There are committees within the structure of the House that has some oversight as to funding for various agencies. And we have 213 Democrats in the House, and then there are 219 Republicans in the House. Being that the numbers are so close, what will each one of you do to reach across the party line, work to build a consensus in Washington to get your co-signed bill or a package across the line? Can you work, or will be you willing to work with the minority party to get your bill passed? You, Ms. McGowan, sorry.
Sure. Well, one thing I do want to say about Congress is the Republicans always take it in the shorts. You know, we are always expected to reach across the aisle and compromise. And by the way, I'm pretty tired of the compromise from Republicans in DC. I'm done with that. And the Republicans do it all the time, Brian. I have never seen, and I argued with a Democrat actually on Tuesday night at the Catawba League of Women Voters. I said, I have never seen a Democrat do that. I can't remember Democrats compromising for us to get our way. When has that ever happened? Can anyone tell me? It has not happened. So I understand we have to reach across the aisle. Here's the thing. There are some common sense Democrats, not many, but there are some common sense Democrats I think we can make ways with. Maybe the gentleman from West Virginia, Joe Manchin. I think he's a common sense Democrat. I think sometimes Kristen Sinema is a common sense Democrat, although I think she's leaving. She's probably losing, right? And then there are a few others here and there, and we can make strides with them if they have common sense. It is time for the Republicans to stand strong. It is time for them to say, this is the line and we are not going to cross it anymore. That's why we're in the problem we're in right now, because Republicans have acquiesced every time, and I'm tired of it. And I know you are too.
Okay. Ms. Jimison?
To piggyback off of Ms. McGowan, Republicans are conservative, or should be, correct. And when we look at Liberty scores and scores of our party, they run pretty low for the most part. We need people in Congress who will not back down. I read a bill recently, 2 Democrats were wanting to actually work on removing the 3-night Medicare stay. If you work in a hospital, you understand that you can't go to a facility unless you've spent 3 nights in the hospital. I love that. Let's get rid of it. But if you can present that bill without adding other things in that's going to hurt the people, we've got to, minimize what's in these bills and then go from there. We can't compromise for the people. We have to stand strong.
Good deal. Mr. Ellers.
Well, to kind of echo what Brooke said, Republicans have won more elections in 50 years than the Democrats at the national and state level, but yet we somehow have lost the country. Everything bad that has happened over the last 50 years, you can blame a progressive Democrat, and you can also blame a complicit rhino Republican that doesn't have the spine to stand up to push back. We keep losing ground, and I'm not going to Washington to hold the ground. I want to go to Washington to retake what we've already lost as a country. So I'm more interested in victory than I am unity. If unity means compromising what your Judeo-Christian values, if unity means trying to compromise what you believe on cultural and social issues and economic issues and budgetary issues, I'm not doing that. And how can you compromise with a party that labels half the country as domestic terrorists and Nazis? And how can you compromise with a party that tries to make this all about saving democracy? These are authoritarians. They don't care about democracy. They think democracy's an outcome and not a process. And they're willing to go to any lengths that they can to silence you into submission so that they can implement their authoritarian agenda. And I'm saying no more, to hell with you. I'm standing my ground, and I don't care about compromising with you. I'm for victory and not unity.
Okay. Good deal. Next question was, in 1994, there was a contract with America that was put out by the Republican Party, the RNC, which gained the Republicans a majority in the House of Representatives the first time in 40 years. There was 10-part plan to the contract. The Republicans passed 9 of those 10 terms. The 10th that did not get implemented and signed was the term limits. And I was there, and I can tell you we didn't do term limits because we never thought we'd get a majority. And so term limits has chased the party since 1994. I would like to ask each one of you all, where do you stand on term limits? Granted that we have a sitting congressman now who has been there 20 years on the public's purse.
Is that
Ms.
to me
McGowan?
again?
Yeah.
I'm first. I'm always first. So yes, I did just sign the congressional U.S. term limits, which limits to 12 years. So that would be 2 in the Senate or 6 in the House. I did sign that term limits pledge. I want you to know. I had a hard time with that because I'm a constitutionalist. I'm almost a purist to the Constitution, and the Constitution was written, and the House, revolves around cycling people in and out. But you have to, the people are the ones that have to do that. And unfortunately, in today's world, with the media and propaganda, and even the education system, we have an incumbency bias, which is why Patrick McHenry sat there for 20 years. Everybody hates Congress. What is it polling at, like 8%? But they love their congressman. That's crazy talk, but it's true. That's the 98% incumbency bias, which was why I signed the U.S. term limits. I don't want to be there for 12 years or 14 years or 20 years. The whole purpose of it was to bring people in and out, to bring patriots in and out, right? If I serve for 3 terms, that's 6 years, or 4 terms, that's 8 years. I don't want to be there any longer than that. I want it to go to the next person, a younger person, somebody who is, energized by it, also has the same mindset, is a patriot. Let's cycle them in and out as the founders intended. That's what I will do.
Good deal. Good deal. Thank you. Ms. Jimison.
Absolutely. Studies show that it takes 20 years to change culture, and we have declined, as you can see. We look at our school systems, we look at, just every day, just trying to survive. And Patrick McHenry has been in almost 20 years. We've got to, again, cycle those individuals out. And yes, I agree with term limits. We've got to move them out. If they get in and they've lied to us time and time again, that's what they do. They look pretty on paper, look like this pretty package, but then when they get to Washington, they compromise. Cycle them out.
Good deal. Thank you. Mr. Ellers.
I'm also for term limits. I'm also for campaign finance reform. And I would commit tonight that if I'm elected, I will serve no more than 3 terms.
Okay.
We need to have a citizen legislature. And what happens is that these people get elected and they go to Washington, they forget where they came from, and they become loyal to their lobbyists, the establishment, and the donor class is what they're doing. And they're voting for their interest and not your interest. So by having the term limits, it's going to keep members of Congress more in tune with their constituents, which is where their attention needs to be. But right now, everything is just out of control in Washington. I'm sick and tired of the politicians. One of the main reasons I'm running is because I'm so tired of being let down by Republicans that campaign one way and go to Washington, D.C. and vote another way. It's happening right now. The guy that we're running to replace just voted for 3 continuing resolutions and $300 million for a new FBI building that's larger than the Pentagon, probably to house more prisoners like they're doing up there on January 6th. So yes, I commit to term limits. And again, I would only serve 3 terms.
All right. Well, thank you. Since Mr. Eller, you introduced the question on January 6th, we'll turn this question to you. It is, with each one of you answering, in the 2020 election, if elected to the House of Representatives, would you have voted to certify the election of 2020? Ms. McGowan?
We definitely would not have certified the election of 2020. That was obviously a steal. You could, yeah, right? Obviously. And it's pretty apparent. It's pretty apparent to anyone with 2 eyes and a brain. One of my tabs on my website, brookfornc.com, actually says stolen election and J6, because that's how important it is to me. I actually wrote it on my website for this campaign. I was in DC for January 6th, and I have friends who are now languishing in prison. One of them over Christmas had 58 days of solitary confinement. Another one has been in prison in Florida. In fact, he's a Green Beret. He has endorsed my race. He's been on my show a few times. I had a podcast for a while. And he's been in prison for probably now 920 days or more. This has been a 4th Amendment violation across the board. People have not been getting due process, and absolutely stolen election. We know that. Not just a stolen election, folks. We have a stolen country. We have lost our country. It is practically gone. I was just at the border 2 weeks ago, and what we saw there was maddening and heartbreaking. And guess what? You're paying for it. You're paying for it every day. You're paying for it with our federal tax dollars and our state tax dollars.
Good deal.
See the
Thank
red?
you.
I have
Good
more.
deal.
Excuse me. Sorry, Rob. I actually had dinner on January 5th, 2021 with Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, and he promised us, because I had founded MAGA Institute, which was a volunteer group across the country where we were certifying candidates, just like candidates you see here. We had dinner with Mark Wayne Mullen because he was trying to curry favor with us to get MAGA Institute certification. He promised us on January 5th he was not going to certify the next day. And he, along with Marsha Blackburn, along with James Langford, several other senators, basically lied to the American people and did it because of the breach. They changed their minds and said, no, we had to go with the majority because of the breach. That's a stolen country. and they need to all go.
Ms. Jamison?
I absolutely agree with Ms. McGowan. I feel like I'm living in a clown show. I personally believe every state turned red, and I would not have certified that election. We need people with guts to stand up, and I believe we have a panel here that would do that. I believe, I don't know how many have committed suicide from that group of individuals. It is just abhorring that they, again, have not been given the due process. And, that's blood on the hands of those sitting in those seats. I take that very seriously. God help us.
Mr. Eller?
I believe that the 2020 election was a rigged and stolen election, and that Joe Biden is not a legitimate president, but he's an illegally installed puppet of the corrupt political machine. I know a lot about history, and I know a lot about presidential elections. On election night at 10:30, 6 states stopped counting votes almost simultaneously, and the man that's ahead by almost 1 million votes in every state all of a sudden is behind when the counting resumes in the morning. Also, in every election since the founding of this republic, anytime a challenger has defeated an incumbent, their party, that challenger has what's called coattails, and their party gains seats in the House of Representatives, which is up for re-election every 2 years. It happened in this century. It happened in 1932. It happened in 1976, 1980. And the only time it didn't materialize was in 2020, when the Republicans gained seats in the House and Joe Biden supposedly won. I was in Washington, D.C. too on January 6th, one of the happiest days and the proudest days of my life. And I did not go there to overturn an election. I went there to send the results back to the states, to give them time to do their due diligence, because there was irregularities. And so, no, I would not have certified the 2020 election. And not because I'm a sore loser, but because there was a legal process called the Electoral Count Act of 1887 that was being followed by the Senate, but it didn't come to fruition.
Good deal. Thank you. So several of you have made mention of the threat of China and the influence of China in our economy, and what you would do with China. To me, just this question here, China and Russia are equally threats to the United States. Internally, also external. Russia and China are still, as Ronald Reagan would say, the greatest threat to our country as a country. Even though the communism system has failed and fallen in the old Soviet Union, the pursuit to dominate the world and dominate America is still there. As congressmen, you will be asked to cast votes that will take military strikes with authorization, but also sanctions against countries that are an eternal threat to the U.S. How do each one of you feel about an external threat like China and Russia to the sovereignty of America? That was a question for you, Brooke.
Well, I mentioned before about, the Chinese Communist Party owning the United States. I'm not quite sure I share your feeling about Russia necessarily being the same threat. I don't see them as equal threats. I know that what I've been witnessing with Ukraine is a proxy war between the United States and Russia through Ukraine, and that is crazy. I mean, we know Ukraine is the most corrupt country in the world. Ukraine was used by Obama and his minions for all kinds of corruption. Now, I think what is an existential threat is that we continue to launder money to a country like Ukraine. And I think that's a dangerous place for us to be. The fact that they continue to attach the Ukraine funding to our border where I was just at, and amazed that we are continuing to bring in millions of people. That's a horrible thing. We have to stop that. Russia, Vladimir Putin was just interviewed by Tucker. I don't know if you watched that 3-hour interview recently, but Vladimir Putin does not act like he's aggressive toward the United States when Trump was in office, right? But now we have a threat because we have such buffoonery in DC, and Russia may see an opportunity, but that time is growing very short. Trump will be back at the end of this year, and we will take back our proper place in the world as the dominant country.
Ms. Jimison?
If we had a president that could lead, I don't believe we would be in this situation. We had no war under Trump. I believe the Biden administration is like a gnawing dog. And I agree with Brooke. Everything that she says, honestly, is just everything that I believe about the Ukraine. I do not believe Russia is a threat. And, you know, we just got to build our military back up. We've weakened our military through the 2020, the COVID vaccines, and we've got to become a strong nation, or, you know, with being weak, we are a target. So we've just got to strengthen our administration, get Trump back in, and turn this around.
Okay. Mr. Ellers?
I do not believe that Russia and China are equal threats. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991 and the satellite states disbanded and the Warsaw Pact dissolved, NATO's mission pretty much was over. We won the Cold War, but rather than claim victory, what did we do? After committing to Mikhail Gorbachev, President Bush, and James Baker and Tony Blair that we would not move 1 inch toward the Russian border, we absorbed 15 countries and went to the Russian border. And the reason we did that is to fuel the military-industrial complex war machine. Ukraine is a red line that Russia cannot tolerate, and it defies our comprehension. Every invasion over the last 300 years has gone through Ukraine. The last one, 1 in 7 Russians died. That's about 45 million Americans, if you want to, by today's standards. China is our #1 threat. What I would do with China, one, an accounting entry to cancel the $1 trillion in debt is a down payment for what they did in COVID. I would delist their companies from the stock exchanges, refuse them buying farmland. I would also seal the southern border for the 24,000 Chinese that are coming in now. And we need to go after China to hold them accountable for the fentanyl that's coming into our country, even if it means seizing their ships on the high seas and taking the fentanyl. And lastly, I think we need to use the U.S. military to declare war on the drug cartels and go after them.
Absolutely. Good deal. Thank you, Mr. Ellers. So glad you mentioned, as you did, one of the questions came in, saying that how almost 2 years ago this August, President Biden's failed evacuation from Afghanistan in such haste, would you be in favor of having committee hearings on evacuations that failed the U.S. from foreign countries? And I guess the question really means Biden was not prepared for the exit that they got out of Afghanistan. Where would you stand?
That was abysmal, what we watched happen when we did leave Afghanistan. I couldn't believe we lost 13 United States incredible soldiers that day. That was a horrible thing that happened to our country. The fact that we left behind $85 billion worth of equipment and machinery and weaponry to the Taliban, oh my word, he should be strung up. And that would be kind to Biden and the defense secretary, all of that. That was nuts. We watched SIVs are still struggling to get out of Afghanistan. How long did it take Americans to finally flee? I have a friend with the Vulnerable Peoples Project who's endorsed my race, who's been helping Americans get out. He actually went over the State Department because the State Department wasn't doing it. He had connections in Afghanistan and still does, actually just delivered them a bunch of coal for Christmas to keep them warm and keep them alive. Nobody has taken better care of Afghanistan than my friend at the VPP. The SIVs that have helped us, we have turned our backs on. Who would ever want to be an ally to the United States again after watching what we did with Afghanistan? So yes, absolutely, they should be brought on charges. First an investigation, and then I would recommend indictments and charges on Biden and the rest. Do you realize that even now, $40 million worth of United States cash is delivered to the Taliban weekly?
Mm-hmm.
Not a joke. We are giving them money every week on pallets so they can maintain that $85 billion worth of equipment. This is criminal. This is absolutely criminal. Why haven't we seen any committees bringing these charges? It has to happen.
Good deal. Absolutely good deal. Thank you, Ms. Jimison.
I can't add anything else to what Brooke has said other than the fact that absolutely we need committees to investigate a whole lot more. Biden, there's a lot of blood on the Biden administration's hands.
Okay.
And yes, we need people to fight, join together, form the committees, and hold these individuals accountable.
All right, Mr. Eller?
Yeah, what happened in Afghanistan was just absolutely tragic and reprehensible. But it just shows what happens when you have a feckless leader. And that's what we have right now that's occupying the White House. I think there should be hearings and investigations to find out more and to hold people accountable. Because if you notice one thing about people who are incompetent and they're not really leaders, and they're authoritarians, is they never take ownership of their mistakes. They always want to blame somebody else. That's a telltale sign of somebody who's an authoritarian. But these people who are running our foreign policy, leaving the $85 billion worth of equipment there, and just the way that we capitulated. Yeah, the world looks at us. Our adversaries look at us and they laugh and they're measuring us. They're wondering if they're that stupid, maybe we should try to do this or do that. So again, our foreign policy is not being used in the interest of America. It seems like it's going toward the globalists and other countries. And it's time that our foreign policy is America first and not overseas first.
Good deal. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. If I could take a liberty here just to mention, I appreciate each one of you passionately about the foreign policy and the direction of the foreign policy of this country. As you know, in the last at least 3 weeks, we've had a mounting confrontation with Iranian rebels, some call them the Houthi there in Saudi Arabia and the Red Sea, as they are attacking vessels that are bringing supplies and materials to the United States. As members of Congress, how do you all feel about this sort of proxy war maybe with Iran, but it's being run by these underlined Houthi there, shooting missiles and rockets into vessels on the Red Sea? Ms. McGowan?
Please forgive me, I've been running a campaign. I've missed some news lately. But I can just tell you that obviously what's happened with Iran, Obama really broke Iran. I mean, Iran was a mess after the Shah, but what took place during their Green Revolution, Obama really broke them. He ignored them. He didn't give them any, he gave them the Iran deal also for the mullahs. So we've got a problem with Iran, and we don't need to be fighting that battle. We need to be supporting our ally in the region, but I don't want to see the United States go to war with Iran. That Iran deal was horrible. It provided nuclear proliferation for Iran. That should have never have happened. We should be pulling that back. As far as a proxy war with Iran, we should not be doing that.
Ms. Jamison?
You have been very busy, so I'm not familiar with what's going on here, but I do believe that we need to step away from focusing on other countries right now and strengthen ours because it has been weakened substantially. And that's my take on that.
Okay. All right. Mr. Ellers?
If we are attacked by the Houthis, I think that we need to respond and retaliate. Let me just say that I'm not an isolationist, but I'm also not an interventionist, and I'm certainly not an instigator. As far as Iran goes, I think we need to have sanctions on them while they're trying to develop their nuclear program. But I have a question to ask. Over there in the Red Sea, where's the Italian Navy? Where's the Spanish Navy? Where's the French Navy? Where's the British Navy? You know, NATO's not an alliance. A NATO is a protectorate, is what it is. We're always over there doing do the fighting, and we're paying for it, while other countries just skate. They're the ones that are dependent more on the oil and everything than we are. So I think that those countries that I just mentioned, I think they need to really go on a naval shipbuilding program and start defending themselves. I'm certainly going to make sure that America defends its interests economically and other ways. But let's not forget that Iran, this radical Islam, these Sharia supremacists are not only a threat to Israel, but also America, because what they're going after is Western civilization. And we've got to protect that, whether it's in Israel or whether it's here.
All right, that gets us up to the top of the hour here. We're at about 3 minutes till 8 o'clock. So I've been going in the left to right because that's kind of how we started out with Ms. McGowan first and then going to Mr. Eller. We will spend this last hour going right to left, which is the way I prefer things to go. But with Mr. Eller here going first, and Ms. Jamison, and then Ms. McGowan, if that's okay with everyone in the audience. So, Mr. Eller, you opened up just now about foreign dependency. You talked about the natural resources of the oil. America still remains dependent on oil from overseas. How would you look at engaging conversation as to what we needed to do to ensure more domestic oil and be less dependent on foreign? How would you approach that, sir?
Well, the first thing I would do is, when Joe Biden was sworn in, he killed the Keystone Pipeline. We need to embrace all of our energy sources. I think we need to embrace oil, gas, coal, and solar. And we need to be energy independent. If we are, it's going to grow our economy, our GDP. It'll be more like 4%. But we just need to just admit and just walk away and turn away from this lie of man-made climate change, and that the Earth's going to end in 7 years and become uninhabitable. That's just reckless. I mean, using that strategy with the Biden administration, they're trying to tell people what they can drive, what they can eat, what kind of appliances they can have. They're trying to dictate the direction of the economy and control that and tell you what you can do. So I agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. We need to be energy independent, and we need to be dominant. And I say, drill, baby, drill, frack, baby, frack. We need to pump as much oil as we can that we just choke on it. That's where I am. So we don't have to ever be dependent again on foreign oil.
Okay, good deal. Ms. Jamison?
We should never be dependent on another nation for our resources. We have those. Biden shut down the pipeline. Trump had it open. And I think a year later, he was for the pipeline in Ukraine. That's corruption. Yes, we need to utilize the resources we have, and we need to become dependent.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I can echo what these fine people have said. Also, Trump had us energy independent. And think about what he did with even Saudi Arabia, right? I mean, he made strides across the world. We had respect under Trump. we sure weren't blowing up Nord Stream pipelines in other regions like we've just done here in the United States. We have really lost it and lost where we should be as a leader in the world, on the world stage. Not only can Trump do it, though, he needs reinforcements. He needs a Congress full of fighters. He needs more in the Freedom Caucus. I have committed to join the Freedom Caucus on day one. I will be a fighter for Trump. I'll be a fighter for you. Trump can't do it alone, and he's not Superman, and he's not God. We depend on the Lord, but we know Trump has been a vessel in the past, and we know that he will do the same things again. Energy independence for the United States is probably one of our main problems. We need to have that as a major priority. Reopen the Keystone Pipeline. Tell Biden to just shove it.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan. All right, so Ms. McGowan, on that end, you mentioned the Lord just now in your statement. Starting with you, Mr. Eller, lots has changed here in America. And over the last 30 years, there have been some very traditional forms of how we have lived as a country removed from us. The question is, when we talk about prayer being back in school, it is always suggested that the government has to do something about it. We have to be enforced by the government. If not the Supreme Court, Congress, which oversees oversight of the Department of Education, to instruct and get prayer back in school, the essential prayer that I think all of us in here grew up with. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think that as a member of Congress, we need to defund and dismantle all these agencies that are promoting CRT, DEI, and this lie of transgender. I'm actually for prayer in schools, okay? And also, there's only two genders. There's male and female, okay? There's two halves to the whole of the human condition, one male and one female, and you cannot have one without the other. I think prayer in schools is perfectly constitutional. I'll tell you why. We go back to separation of church and state. That's not even in the First Amendment. That was in a letter in 1802 that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist. Thomas Jefferson in 1787 helped author the Northwest Ordinance, which was a document, one of our foundational documents to bring states into the Union northwest of the Ohio River. In Article 3 of the Northwest Ordinance, it says specifically, and I invite you to read it yourself, Google it, Article 3, religion, morality, being necessary to the happiness of mankind, schools, and good government shall forever be encouraged. So I submit to you that there should not be separation of God and state. I don't think a religion should be established, but we need to promote Judeo-Christian Western values because, as John Adams said, our country is only fit for a religious people.
Thank you. Ms. Jimison?
I agree that we need to disband the Department of Education among other three-letter agencies. I believe education needs to be state-driven with heavy parent involvement. And as far as prayer in the schools, we've seen a lot of changes since prayer was taken out of schools. A lot of violence, a lot of crime, a lot of pregnancies. How we can turn things back if we would just embrace that again. There's absolutely something so beautiful about praying to an almighty, sovereign God. And I believe he hears us when we pray. And I would love to see prayer back in schools, and certainly would like to see the Department of Education disband because I believe they have way too much power and have tried to dictate to parents on how to educate their children.
Ms. McGowan?
Good. We were never supposed to have a federal education system. This is crazy, right? That's right. Jimmy Carter ruined that for us in 1982 when he stood up the Department of Education, and it's been a downhill spiral ever since. I know you've experienced that probably with your children and grandchildren going to school. I remember in the 80s, it was outcome-based education, right? That was very scary. They took this prayer out of schools in the 60s, Madeline Murray O'Hara, and then outcome-based education, and then what they called CRT for a while. Well, Common Core first. Common Core was our battle in the early 2000s, 2015, 2010s. And then CRT and now DEI. Gone off the rails educationally. And I went to seminary in I graduated in 2012. And one of the things that we learned, a cute little quip by C.S. Lewis, and that is, hell is empty because the devils are all here. And I've been saying they're all in Congress. But I also think they're in our public education system. As you can tell just by watching what's happened with children thinking that they are now boys or now girls, the opposite gender, or maybe they're non-binary, whatever that means. Maybe they're a kitten and they need to go to a litter box in the bathroom, or maybe they're a puppy and they're a horse, or it's just gone insane. And the parents need to rein it back in, but the school boards need to be flipped as well. And I'm really proud of Moms for Liberty and Mama Bears and other groups across the country who have been flipping school boards. But let's flip Congress too. Let's stop the establishment being in charge. Let's stop DC being in charge, right? The lobbyists, we shouldn't be listening to them. We should be listening to the people of the district. I will take your voice to DC and I will battle for you.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. Appreciate each one of you on that answer, particularly dealing with prayer in schools. Very, very important. I think particularly here in the Bible Belt South. And I think we have gotten away from that, just my opinion on that. So moving right along, we saw at the height of 2 years ago around the country, and then a move in Congress when the Democrats got control, they wanted to remove certain statues and certain reconciliation monuments around the country that was supposed to bring the country back together post-Civil War. But there is a group in the Congress in DC that has set out to defund and do everything they can to take down what was meant to be good for the country and made it a political agenda. And they're actively right now still getting their agenda through, even though Republicans have the majority. They are still taking statues out of the U.S. Capitol. They're taking statues out of Arlington Cemetery. And this question comes because they said they're mad as hell. So I wanted to know what you all thought about that. And even governing in the majority, it's very important that what we set out to do good remains that good. Where do you all stand on removing statues and monuments around the country? That's the question. Mr. Eller, sorry. All right.
I tell you what, I don't think America is going to be great again until every statue is re-erected. When the commanders become the Redskins, the Guardians become the Indians, and every military base needs to go back to revert to their names like Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to judge people in the eyes of the 21st, people from the 19th century through the lens of the 21st century. By and large, statues are erected to people that do something good with their life or for people. And people are products of their time. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Robert E. Lee. And I think that we fail to remember that. And these people that want to remove statues, I just say to them, you know, there's two ways to build a building. You can either build yours from the bottom up, highest, or you can tear everybody else's building down. So rather than tear everybody else's building down, why don't you guys get off your ass and go build something that's good? And maybe one day we'll erect a statue to you. But until then, history is not for you to rewrite. And we need to be historically accurate and not politically correct. And we need to embrace and protect our statues and our institutions that have made this country the great country that it is.
Good deal. Thank you. Ms. Jimison.
It's not just about the statues, it's about cancel culture. I think of Aunt Jemima, the pancakes, and how they just took that away from her. History is important, and we need to, it's maybe painful, but we can work through that pain. We've got to restore, like Mr. Eller said, we restore our statues. And we really, I believe Trump was working on, getting back to accurate education of history, the Constitution and the things that really matter that have been taken out of education system.
Good deal. Thank you. Ms.
Oh,
McGowan.
I don't know, Brian. It feels like this was nothing but a distraction. They just pick on something like that. Tell me, has anyone's life improved since these statues have come down? Because there's still a whole lot of caterwauling going on from that same group. And excuse me, why are weak Republicans kowtowing to this constantly? This is our country. This is our history. This is our past. This is our future. And weak Republicans, both in Raleigh and in DC, have bent over for the left. And I'm fed up. And I will fight back. This has got to stop. This has been a distraction from things like what's happening at the border. This has been a distraction from our budget. This has been a distraction from people paying attention that we're about to lose the dollar, the petrodollar. We're about to lose that. In fact, BRICS is expanded to like 10 or 11 rather than the 5. I mean, we are about to lose it, folks. Statues are a distraction. We have to pay attention to the things that matter. This is a dangerous territory we're approaching. This year is an election, and it is a crazy year, and we know, I've been watching, I mentioned before at the podium, I watched WHO, I watched COP28, I watched what they're doing. They just had a meeting in Davos last month where they're war gaming a new pandemic, scamdemic, just like they did in 2019. That one was called Event 201 in October of 2019, and then 3 months later, we had COVID. Do you also know that Trump said right before that he was never going to sign another CR budget, and then COVID hit? Think on that.
Good deal. Thank you. All right, so the next question, sort of along the same line. So each of you have really shared your ideas and brought up a couple times about the border. And that seems to be the hot topic leaning. This question here is, the border should be the most sovereign spot in our country. The question is, what will each of you do if elected to Congress to secure, protect, and defend the rightful border of the U.S.? That's the question. Mr. Eller, first to you.
Well, I have an 11-point plan to secure the border, but in the interest of time, I'll just tell you the major ones I think are a priority. Number one is I would aid Texas immediately and assist them in securing the border. Number two is we need to cut off all federal aid to illegals that are coming into the country and are here. No free health care, education, housing, or food stamps. That's costing $450 billion a year. Number three, we end birthright citizenship. Number four, Congress needs to pass a law that says that illegals are not to be counted when it comes to congressional apportionment, because right now, just today I read, there's 22 additional seats in the U.S. House because of the number of illegals in the country. And also, we need to formulate a plan, whether it's done peacefully or forcibly, to remove the 10 million people that are here illegally. And any person running for Congress, including maybe the two that aren't here tonight, if they will not commit to taking a hard line and doing that, regardless of how ugly it looks, then what they're telling you about the southern border is just happy talk. They don't mean it, and you don't need to vote for them. So I'm going to secure the southern border, build a border wall, and our country's sovereignty has to be paramount.
Okay. Next question for you, Ms. Jimison.
I stopped on the side of the road the day before yesterday to speak with a veteran that was holding up a sign. And he was needing help for his teeth. He had pyorrhea and he needs all of his teeth pulled. If I had the money, I would have helped him on the spot. I do believe that, God expects us to be kind, and to treat people right, those that come into our country. But there's a process. The border needs to be shut. Our people are suffering. There's homeless people. Our veterans are not getting the care they deserve. And we're spending, I heard $5,000, giving them a card and putting them in hotels, all of these immigrants. And let me bring to your attention, I have read articles, and you've probably seen the Fox News, that, the Koch brothers, they, want open borders. They are for open borders, and they support one of our candidates who would like to fast track some of those individuals. There's a process. Close the borders, let them come through the door and do this right. I can't do that on my own. We've got to build a team, and we've got to go in and we've got to fight. And I believe, this panel will do that.
Ms. McGowan.
So I mentioned before, I was just at the border, and I'm the only candidate in this race to see it. I want it stopped. I was heartbroken and really mad. It was maddening and heartbreaking all at the same time, what we witnessed there. I saw about 60 at Sunrise, at Gate 6W in Yuma, and they're filtering over from Texas because Greg Abbott has done the strong thing and has stood up to the Biden administration. And we didn't stand with Texas. Yeah, right? Thank you, Greg Abbott. Thank you for holding our sovereignty a line in the sand. Thank you for doing that. And I'm grateful to the 25 states who stood with him January 25th, 26th, those days, and are still standing with him and still sending material support, as well as National Guard if he needs it. We didn't do that here. And I was ashamed of North Carolina, and I was ashamed of the General Assembly because they held a supermajority and could have called back into special session. I've been calling for this since that week in January. They could have called in a special session and offered some material support, whether it was money for razor wire or money for more law enforcement. They had the power to do that. Don't let them tell you they didn't. The supermajority had the power to do that. And I was told when I talked to all the legislators that I did speak with, we're all busy. Some of us are running for higher office. Some of us are running for re-election. Keep that in mind. They did not draw the line in the sand for you, for our country, for our safety, because they were concerned about what they were going to do next, and they wanted re-election. I'm mad about that, Brian. I watched those people. I saw tears in those girls' eyes. I don't know what they went through necessarily, but I'm sure it was cartel related. All the women and children were given a rape kit. This is real. This is a humanitarian crisis, and we are paying for it.
Good deal. Thank you. Since you introduced that last line there, Ms. McGowan, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Ellers, and turn to January was a month known as the observance of human trafficking. Human trafficking is big business for somebody in this country. And there are some forces in this country that are profiting off human trafficking. I think it's a law that is not talked about enough. It surely is not all that well enforced, but we are the pro-life party, and we don't sound off enough about what is happening to young girls and boys and children in this country enough. Human trafficking is real. How much do each one of you all know about this national disaster known as human trafficking? I'll start with you, Mr. Ellers.
I tell you, I watched a movie over the summer that had a big impact on me. It was about human trafficking. James, the actor, Caviezel starred in it. This goes back to the cartels. And when I'm in Congress, one of the things I want to do is I want to give President Trump, when he's sworn in, the authorization to use the U.S. military to go after the cartels and also destroy their infrastructure, whether it's here or abroad. We also need to use local law enforcement to do that. But we've got to draw a hard line. This is just criminal and immoral what they're doing to people, and it's all done for profit. But yeah, we're going to have to go after the cartels. I'm sure the Chinese are involved in it as well, like they are everything else as far as smuggling fentanyl and everything else into the country. But it's just time to draw a hard line and go after them no matter what it takes.
Yeah. Ms. Jimison?
Release the existing files. I believe 2020 opened up my eyes on a degree that, wow, I cried myself to sleep so many nights when I realized what was really going on in our nation. Release the Epstein files, hold the politicians, the elite, accountable for what they're doing behind the scenes. They're keeping the information from the people. When we think about what that entails to a child, to a baby, none of us should sleep. And we should demand this information to be released. These children belong to the Lord. And I tell you, we will see the judgment of God even more if we don't do something this year. This year, it breaks the heart of God, and we've got to turn it around. We've got to stop it. Close the borders, get a hold of the cartels, yes, but hold those accountable who are on that list that they keep holding from the people. Demand it. I will demand it.
Yeah, Ms. McGowan?
Right. So you might be aware of the Epstein files. And the reason I was excited about that is because when we talk about Republicans, they're on that list. They're on that list, and that's why they're not supporting the release of it. We just had the Super Bowl. Do you know that's the most sex trafficked date in our country?
Mm-hmm.
We are consumers. We are consumers, and I learned that also in the Sound of Freedom that you're mentioning, but also I've known people who are in this ministry of trying to save people from sex trafficking. We consume it in the United States more than anywhere else in the world. That's disgusting. Americans go over to Thailand for sexcations, but they also are doing it here now because we've brought it all here. We will, as Diana mentioned, we will suffer the wrath of God in the United States. I think that's part and parcel of why we're in the condition that we're in. We're so sin saturated. We're so disgusting as a people. Our society has gone off the rails. And until we hold the Republicans also accountable, it'll continue, Brian. It won't stop until we hold them all accountable. Honestly, this should be firing squad type stuff. What you do to children like that, that should be firing squad.
Amen. Good deal. Thank you. All right. So each of you, thank you all for that answer, by the way. This question here, which we have not had any topic particularly on, but we do have the question in here. The Supreme Court, 2 years now, gave the American people back its freedom when they overturned Roe v. Wade. This took back a good portion of our government, a good portion of our freedoms, and what we culturally and religiously believe in. But in the U.S. Congress, our Congress has continued to fund Planned Parenthood. Even as a majority in the White House, the Senate, and the House, we did not defund Planned Parenthood 100%. The question is, if you get to Congress, will you demand with your voice that we 100% defund Planned Parenthood?
I would 100% defund Planned Parenthood. And I would also defund agencies that are paying and facilitating these kids for having sex change operations. That's child molestation, and it's criminal. And I would also revoke the medical licenses of doctors who perform these surgeries on children under the age of 18. Planned Parenthood might as well be a little murder factory, in my opinion.
Yep.
And I am pro-life. I'm glad we won. Hey, we won, right? We overturned Roe v. Wade with the Dobbs decision.
Amen.
It's now gone back to the states. And I'm glad to see that decision. And if I'm in Congress, if the legislation, federal legislation should be introduced to protect the unborn, I will support that. I will be pro-life, and I commit to that.
Good deal. Thank you. Ms. Jimison?
I would absolutely vote to defund Planned Parenthood. Abortion breaks the heart of God. In Proverbs chapter 6, we see that God hates 7 things. And actually, he mentions something other than the shedding of innocent blood. He mentions that he hates a lying tongue and those that lie and spread false witness. So he mentions lying twice as much. That's something to chew on there for a little bit. But abortion breaks the heart of God. We should not be funding this act. Yeah, a lot of things took place under Lyndon B. Johnson's administration. I believe that's when the 501(c) was initiated, and there was a plan there to shut the voice of the church, the largest entity in the nation. So you shut the voice of the church, and then you politicize a biblical issue. That's a problem. You see how they did that? So we've got to give the voice back to the church, but we've got to protect the innocent.
Ms. McGowan?
So after graduation from seminary, I was director for the Carolinas, something called Center for Bioethical Reform. And we brought out very large displays, like 2-story tall displays onto college campuses, something called GAP, the Genocide Awareness Project. And we really put it on the posters on these big canvases, what abortion looked like. And we would have an aborted baby, and then a slave with his back really torn up, and then also a Nazi, a Jewish child or a Jewish person or something depicting the Nazi. And all of it would say is not a human on all of it. So the slave is not a human, the Jew is not a human, and the baby was not a human. That's where our mentality went for a long while. And I believe right now, Brian, this generation right now, this generation, the Zoomers, if you will, they're coming back away from that mindset. They're really, I think it's like 60%, almost 55 or 60% have decided that they are the pro-life generation. It's incredible. God is moving in the hearts of these youth, which is amazing. Thank you, Lord, right? We can turn this back around. The Dobbs case was amazing, and it did give it back to the states. Guess what? If you don't like where your state, if you don't like if you can have an abortion in your state, you can move, right? That's why Maryland was Maryland. That's where the Catholics all lived. You could go with your feet. You could vote with your feet. Go to California if you want to have an abortion. North Carolina, unfortunately, is still an abortion state. And we have a supermajority. Yep. How sick is that? They call themselves pro-life. They don't even follow the platform.
Yep. Good deal. Thank you all. Thank you for those responses. Let's shift the idea of some of the questions here a little different now and bring it back home here to North Carolina. In Washington, D.C., you all will be asked to vote on money that goes back to states. North Carolina receives funding, of course, comes from the federal government, then it goes down to Raleigh and then out to the counties. Iredell County, and no disrespect to other counties, I know about Iredell because that's where I live, but Iredell County received $38 million in federal funds last year that was supposed to work for infrastructure and various different things, but the discretion fell on the county as to how they wanted to use those funds, no matter how they came from the feds. How much of taxpayers' money, once it leaves Washington and comes to the states, should the local municipalities be accountable for how they spend the money? What should be their priorities? Starting with you, Mr. Ellers.
Well, getting back to a comment I made earlier about not counting illegals for congressional apportionment, if that were the case, North Carolina would be getting more federal money right now because the census dictates how much money each state gets. So by passing legislation like that, that is going to translate into more dollars for North Carolina. Now, as far as the money filtering down from Washington to Raleigh to the counties, that's really something at a local level, I think, with the county commissioners. And that's why I think it's important for the voters of Iredell County and in this district to really pay attention to what your local representatives, what they want. I mean, that's a good question for them. But there has to be accountability, you know, with the money as far as waste goes and everything. There has to be oversight. But again, I think this is more of a local problem and a local issue. And I want to thank you for that question because you asked that question. I'm going to have to vote here myself shortly. I'm going to investigate a little bit more about how my people running for county commissioner, what they think.
Absolutely. Yes, Ms. Jimison.
I think I'm a little bit more concerned about what's attached to the bills to get the money. You know, like the COVID appropriations money and the Medicaid expansion plans. I was working in 2021 to go to every school board district to educate on the Medicaid expansion. There was an agenda attached to that before North Carolina received the monies, and it was LGBTQ in the schools. I'd personally like to know if that was still a part of that plan when they passed that this past year. And yes, you know, we've got to, you know, look at where these monies are going, and as far as like, you know, the federal level versus the state level. I'm just really more concerned about what's attached to those bills. I don't want to be using my tax monies to support things that, you know, don't benefit children or the people.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jimison. Ms. McGowan.
What a messed up system, right? We send $1 to DC and we get back 70 cents of it, and then they tell us how we can spend it. This is screwed up. The whole thing is screwed up. There was a time when Ron Paul would say, "End the Fed," and I came alive with that thought. We should be ending the Fed. The 1913 creature from Jekyll Isle, that has wrought so much havoc on the United States. You know, you talk about the COVID monies, the CARES Act during COVID. They sent so much money to every state, but then they gave all these strings attached. One of the strings attached to even our county was that by the year, I hope I don't misquote this because I haven't looked at it in a long time, but I think it was like by the year 2025, which is next year. So this was back in 2020 when it happened, that we had to restrict single family home permits. And that's, unless that's been repealed, they're not talking about that, but that's still been a string attached. You talk about other COVID things when, or the schools, when Obama would give you back your money, the federal money to your schools, he'd say, well, you have to have the bathroom thing back in 2012, whenever it was, the bathroom thing where they had to let boys in the girls' bathroom, or you're not going to get your own money back. And our state didn't draw the line. Some states did. They said, give us all our money and we're going to do exactly what we want to do to protect children. But we didn't. And we kowtow to that constantly. And that has to stop. Congress is the way to stop that. We have the power of the purse, and the people there need to have a backbone and stop this.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So a question here was on, we have noticed over the last several years that both parties have done this gerrymandering. And gerrymandering has kept some folks in power and in government for a very long time. What are your positions on gerrymandering districts to protect incumbents? Mr. Ellers?
Well, obviously gerrymandering is illegal, but Congress doesn't really have oversight over that. That is a state issue. The state legislature draws the districts. I think they should try as much as possible to keep counties together. But I don't believe that the courts and the judges should come in, and this has all been politicized, and tell the state legislatures how they're going to draw the districts. I mean, just look at this district right here. How many times has it been redrawn? A few months ago, we didn't even know we were going to have this district or what it was going to look like. But I'm not for any more federal intervention in that area. The people that look at the Biden administration, they wanted to abolish the Electoral College. They wanted to have oversight over elections. So once you start letting the government in and looking at that, I just think that's going to lead to some bad things. So again, I think this is a state issue, but I would keep counties together as much as possible.
Ms. Jimison?
Republicans are for less government, right? That's one of the reasons why I got interested in this area, because of the federal tracking database that was voted on. Boy, 2022 was rough. We had like 4 line changes. I believe there was some, corrupt ideas behind that. It is a state-driven thing, and the federal government needs to stay out of it. Keep it to the states. And yes, I do believe that there needs to be fairness.
Ms. McGowan?
So it's actually gerrymandering. Did you know that? It's not even gerrymandering, it's gerrymandering, named after, I can't remember his name, Elliot Gary or something. Interesting little tidbit. You mentioned the congressional apportionment, with the new growth from just the border under the Biden administration. I keep saying that. I think there's a reason. Under the Biden administration, if it's 20 million, then that's almost 40 new seats. And the purpose of it has been to demographic change, all of the demographics, right? So you heard the lady from, maybe you didn't, but there was a lady up in Brooklyn who said, we're losing so many people because they're escaping. They're refugees now to Florida, or they're going to North Carolina, right? A lot of them are coming here. But we need more people up here so we can have another congressional district. So it's all about the numbers, and it's all about demographics and the Democrat Party controlling our futures. Gerrymandering is illegal, but we know it happens. It just happened here. It is a state's thing. It happens every 2 years. So it's not within the 18 enumerated powers in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which is what Congress would have to do with. We have a problem in Congress, Brian, and that is Congress doesn't look to the Constitution anymore and understand what our rules are, right? Those 18 enumerated powers means you are within these powers. That's what you have. Enumerated means numbered. You have a limited amount, but they've just gone off the rails.
Good deal. Thank you. All right, next question falls along the lines which was to ask what you all think about what are the candidates' opinions on mandates and having mandates enforced on the people? And will you be a voice against mandates, the overhand of national federal government? Yeah, that's the question. Mr. Eller?
Mandates are atrocious, and I'm against mandates. Just hearing that word come out of your mouth makes me think about COVID and just how they mandated what they did to our businesses, to our kids, just to us. Mandate that you get a vaccine, mandate that you wear a mask. I'm proud to say that I never complied. I never wore a mask. Matter of fact, I was defiant and intentionally defiant. Vaccine mandates, totally unconstitutional. Government uses mandates to override the Constitution. We have a Bill of Rights. First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law. The people that believe in mandates, they want to put something in front of that. It says, except in times of pandemic, except in times of, there's always an emergency. And when you do that, you give the Bill of Rights new meaning. It's no longer the Bill of Rights, it's now the Bill of Privileges, right? It can be granted and taken away at the whim of politicians. So no, I'm not for any mandates. We need to follow the letter of the law of the Constitution. I believe in the literal interpretation of the Constitution, and government needs to be reined in. And the people that try to slap mandates on us, they need to be defunded. And as far as I'm concerned, I think they need to be held accountable, and they need to be fired.
Ms. Jimison?
2020 changed me. I've always considered myself a rule follower, and I didn't realize until 2020 that that's not necessarily always good. I too didn't wear a mask, of course, on my job in a hospital. That's different. But I wouldn't wear the mask out in the community. I knew this was wrong. And that's why I went after McHenry to ask him why. He voted for the federal vaccine tracking database. I don't know about you, but I don't like the idea of being tracked, especially by our government. I'm probably on a watch list somewhere with everything I've shared and discussed. But mandates they're criminal. They're against the law. It's made me become so much more of a rebel. Don't tell me what to do. And the vaccines, nurses were heroes in 2020. 2021, they were zeros because many stood up and said, no, we're not taking that. They lost their jobs. Government, FDA, CDC, everybody needs to be investigated. This was a crime against humanity, the biggest crime against humanity in our nation in all of time. Needs to be investigated. These people need to be held accountable. Congress needs to be held accountable because they sat on it.
COVID is what I think of when you say mandates, right? So there were mask mandates, there were social distancing mandates. Stand right there on that spot. Like that made any difference. Everybody became a tiny tyrant, even the guy at Costco, even the pharmacist, let me go there for a minute. When in the history of ever has a pharmacist been able to tell you your doctor can't prescribe that to you? And that happened. And that happened during COVID, and that was a life-saving medication being withheld from you because powers on high, WHO, WEF, CDC, COP28, all those places are, if you've read the Bible, you know the beginning and the end. And the end talks about a one world government. And every time we turn around, they're trying to thrust us into this one world government, this control over us. We're losing our national sovereignty pretty much on the regular. Every May, the WHO continues to go back into something called, let's do a pandemic treaty. If 168 countries agree to it, we're going to have this pandemic treaty. Well, that's coming again. And again, as I mentioned before, they've war gamed it in Davos, and it's coming again. My father was murdered in COVID in 2022 in the hospital, along with 1.2 million other Americans. In the support groups that my mom and I are in, we've heard this story over at thousands of times, the same story. Medical kidnap, isolation, ventilation, remdesivir, death. It happened 1.2 million times in the country. Yes, we must hold them accountable. Yes, we must investigate. Recommend indictments. Indictments won't come under this DOJ, right? Because crazy Merrick Garland and crazy Joe Biden. But when Trump comes back, or a Republican, mostly Trump, but when that happens, we will go after them because they must be held accountable or it'll happen again.
Okay, good job. All right, So we have this question for each one of you to answer separately. What differentiates you from your other opponents? Starting with you, Mr. Eller, and I would keep it to the opponents that are here in the room. I know you were ready. Yeah, what differentiates you between, well, not that question, but as a candidate, what differentiates you between your opponents who are here on stage?
Well, I wish you would have included the other two.
I know, but we don't want to give them that
The fact that
liberty.
they're not here should speak volumes to you and plant a seed of doubt in your mind about their commitment to this district.
That's
But
right.
to answer your question, these are fine women here. They're good people, and I probably can't really find much disagreement with them on any policy issue. And I don't know them that well, so I can't really say, not knowing that well, what really differentiates me. But I will tell you this. In my whole life, I've always been the person that has never been afraid to ask the tough questions. I've never shied away from taking a position on a political issue, even if it meant when I was in college, somebody painted a swastika on my door, or standing up to vaccine mandates. Whether it's going to Washington, D.C. on January 6th to stand up against a rigged and stolen election. I'm the kind of person that will take a position and back it up with facts and hold my ground. And I've done that all my life. It's just part of my DNA and who I am. And we're sick and tired of having people go to Washington, D.C., Republicans, okay, the rhinos, and say one thing and then go up there and get absorbed by the swamp and letting everybody down like I feel let down. So I know exactly who I am. The only person I really trust to stand up is me. And that's one of the reasons I'm running, because I know how I'm going to vote. I'm one of y'all and I represent y'all. And that's what I'm going to do if you'll allow me to go to Washington and represent you.
Good deal. Ms. Jimison.
I honestly would not hesitate to vote for either of these up here. In my spirit, I feel like they're genuine and they mean what they say. That means a lot, and that's what we've got to go on in this hour. 2024 is so important. The Oliver Anthony song really hit me about the rich men in Washington. We will never see change if we keep doing the same thing over and over. And I think there's a term for that. It's called insanity. And we need to ignite a fire in our families, our friends, our communities, and we need to get this message out. We can't have change unless we are the change. And I am a fighter. I've always had to be a fighter. I left home at 15, lived on the streets. I have always taken up for people. I advocate in my field. I save lives. That's what I do. I fight when I see things that are wrong. And I won't hesitate to do that for you. I do believe I'm not probably as skilled in or voiced in like these two are. I mean, you can tell that they know their stuff. I'm on it. I can learn. I'm a fast learn. But I do believe in fighting for other people. It's my passion. I love people. I just love people. And that's who we need. We need people in Congress that care about other people and not their own agendas. Thank you.
Ms. McGowan.
I don't know how to differentiate from these people here. I had so many more things to say, Brian, about the ones that are missing. And we'll get to that later in my closing remarks.
Okay. All right.
Wait, I'm not done. These are fine folks. I trust Charles to do good things in DC. I probably could differentiate from both of them just by knowing who I am, knowing that I make my plans, but I also go to the Lord for guidance. I want to be a missionary to Congress, but I also want to be a fighter. And someone called me Joan of Arc not too long ago and then made me a little AI. And I do feel like that I would do that kind of fight for you. And you know what? If you think back to our founders, they pledged their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor. And that's kind of what it felt like on January 6th. That's kind of what it felt like that night of January 6th after we watched what took place during the day. That we were pledging our lives and our fortune and our sacred honor. And I have all of my pegs in the right place right now. My daughters are married and they have the covering of their husbands. My grandbaby lives 800 feet away from me and I have another grandbaby on the way. I don't have children at home. I'm ready to go to Congress and to do this for you, and I will fight for you, and I will fight for you to the death.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. So we are 8 minutes from the end of this forum. I thank you all very much. We will now shift to where you will each get 2 minutes to come up to this podium and give your closing and your very best pitch, and then remain up here after Ms. McGowan is done, and the four of us will stand across to talk, and we'll close out the forum, okay? Starting with you, Mr. Ellers.
I was told 3 minutes.
All right, we'll just hold you to 3.
Thanks for having me here. And I tell you, at the outset, I said this was a 1776 moment. And it is. It really, truly is, because our liberty, our prosperity, and our security are in jeopardy. I'm sick and tired of seeing spineless Republicans in Congress. They've let me down for too long. And it's going to take somebody with leadership to go up there and change things. I'm a leader, not a follower. I'm a lion, and I'm not a sheep. And my loyalty is to you. I have no allegiance to the lobbyist, the establishment, the donor class. My allegiance is to the Constitution, the God that made me and died for me, and to you, the people of the 10th District. A lot of people run for public office for different reasons. Mostly it's selfish and personal ambition. But my reasons for running for Congress are no different than Donald Trump's reasons for running for president in 2016, 2020, and now. They're rooted in something that's virtuous and pure. It's to uphold the Constitution, to work for the interest of America and the American people. And I want to stand up here tonight and announce that I fully endorse Donald Trump for president of the United States. And he's going to need reinforcements in Washington to help move that agenda of Make America First along. And I'm the person who can do that. Make America Great Again is synonymous with my motto of liberty, prosperity, and security. So I would welcome the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. on your behalf and look after your interest. And I would appreciate your support and your vote on March the 5th. To learn more about me, you can go to charlesellerforcongress.com. But we cannot afford to make a mistake. You cannot afford to take another risk and vote for somebody that's going to go to Washington, D.C. and let you down. I'm not going to let you down. I can promise you that. With that, thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
All right. Ms. Jimison, come on. Hold right there for me. All right.
This is such an honor to be given this opportunity. If you just knew my life, I think you would just be rejoicing with me. I'm kind of proud of myself, honestly. And that scripture came to me. I want to share that with you because it's very powerful. I always want to use my platform, number one, to glorify the Lord. And this scripture, this passage just really burned a fire in me. It shook me because it's so applicable for this day. It came back to me throughout our event. Amos chapter 5, 10 through 15. There are those who despise the ones who uphold justice in the courts and hate the ones who tell the truth. You've levied a straw tax on the poor, and you've taxed their grain. You've built your stone mansions, but you're not going to live in them. And you've planted your lush vineyards. You're not going to drink their wine. Why? Because I've seen how great are your offenses and how mighty are your sins. I've seen you take bribes from the innocent. The prudent keep quiet in such times, for the times are evil. The days are evil. Seek good, not evil, that you may live. Then the Lord God Almighty will be with you just as you say he is. You see, come primaries and the general election, everyone's a Christian, right? You see it on their bio. But what you say has to line up with what you do. And at this time, because I have a lot of things going on in my life, I fight for people. I have saved my daughter's life time and time again because of our medical system. Obama's plan has destroyed our nation and the quality of our healthcare system. My daughter could have died many times had I not have been given the ability to research and find doctors to line up with my research. She actually passed out, got a call right before the event. Because I'm so passionate about our nation and because I love people, I, again, believe these two are great. I want to, and because I want to keep rich men and politicians from going to Washington, I want every single one of you that would put a vote towards me, I want it to go to Brooke McGowan. I believe in her. I believe that she has the ability to fight for us. She's at a place, and we've got to make this happen. And so I defer all of my votes to Brooke McGowan because I believe we have a chance. We can do this. I'm tired of seeing people lose. Thank you. God bless you so much for this opportunity.
Okay. All right. I'm quickly, Ms. Brooke. All right. All right. It's Brooke McGowan.
I'm going to hug you.
Okay, but speak first. Go ahead.
Okay. Definitely want to thank you for being here tonight. It is getting a little bit late in the hour, and I know it means something that you show up, and I hope that you realize that you are important to me. You're important to me, and I want to serve you. And as I've mentioned tonight from the table, I also want to help save you. And by doing that, through the COVID investigations. I know you've heard me say about it many times before. My father was murdered, and so were 1.2 million Americans. If we don't change that, if we don't stop that, if we don't hold people like Fauci and Redmond and others accountable, even here, Barrick and University of North Carolina, if we don't hold those people accountable, then anyone can do anything anymore at all. I mean, the tyranny can just reign on us. You said mandates, I think tyranny, right? So don't let Raleigh pick your next congressman. You're seeing that in your mailboxes. Don't let DC pick your next congressman. You're seeing that in your mailboxes, right? I have no PAC. There is nobody that is going to buy me ever. I have fought by myself, and I will always fight by myself for the right things, for righteousness, for virtue, for God, and for you. It's very important that we do this today. I have a story to tell you about 2014. If you think back, during the Obama's second midterm election, he called that his shellacking 2.0. His first shellacking was 2010, and then 2014 was his shellacking 2.0. There was an obscure candidate in the 7th District of Virginia. His name was Dave Bratt. He unseated Eric Cantor, the majority leader in the House, Eric Cantor. This can be done. Let me tell you, Eric Cantor spent $1.5 million to lose to Dave Bratt, who spent $84,000. That means Eric Cantor spent $55 nearly for a vote, and he lost. And Dave Bratt spent 44 cents for a vote, and he won. Let's Dave Bratt this thing. I will be the fighter you need in Congress. I'm Brooke McGowan, brookefornc.com if you want to support or help. We have a few days coming up that we could use you at the polls if you'd like to help hand out material. This is a grassroots campaign. I don't even have $84,000, but I don't need it because I need this groundswell of we the people. Because we the people will determine who our congressperson is, not DC, not Raleigh. Tell them no.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, good deal. Thank you. Thank each one of you candidates. And now here is Linda Petro, who is the District 10 Chairwoman, and she will say good night and thank you. And we did good to end at 9:01. And thank you to WSIC, our media partners, and the students from Statesville High School, and you, the voters out there. One of these three people, well now two, should be your next congressman, folks, because they had the guts to show up to here and said, you matter in this district. So I hope you'll consider that and take that home. Ms. Petro?
Just wanted to say thank you for coming out and listening. It was very informative. I wish luck for the two candidates that are remaining. And I hope you have a safe drive home, and don't forget to vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Good job. Good job.